Man, Warner Brothers is an insane company with a huge as hell fall from grace. In ancient videos of mine, I used to call them the kings of gaming as far as pre-existing brands go, when up against Marvel or debatably even Star Wars. The Arkham series is still what I would call the best superhero gaming franchise, better than the actual good Spider-Man games of the PS3 era, despite some one-ups those Spidey games have, like free roam being more fun than just gliding around. And then there's the sped room Insomniac games that don't belong in the discussion at all. Long before Marvel rivals caught up with flying colors, DC had the best and dang near only superhero online experience beyond fighting games like Injustice 1 and 2 that sold more than Marvel vs. Capcom. But we also had Arkham Origins Online, that used to be a slept-on thing that Warner Brothers won't remaster for some reason, even though a modern port of that would have probably held way more players than that lore-destroying Squad game. But anyway, all those once-held highs don't matter when you're now at the very bottom when you decide to just give up on multiple projects like Multiverses that'll give its own video, but most importantly, Wonder Woman that was being developed by an extremely top-notch development team who made the Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor franchise, a franchise that in my opinion was Arkham level with its quality via taking tidbits of the Assassin's Creed stealth formula and then mixing it in with Arkham-esque combat, where beyond the Y or triangle counter prompt you would press this button combination, BX or circle square to do a beatdown, or these two buttons like triangle circle and BY to do a rad-ass execution, or have to jump over enemies with shields. Right trigger, quick fires, a ranged attack just like a Batarang, etc. And sure, that may sound like a shameless ripoff on paper, but both of those games were owned by Warner Brothers, which means they were sorta rightfully ripping off themselves. A chocolate bar doesn't taste bad for tasting like another chocolate bar. But anyway, there's some cool enough significant changes and differences like ranged moves that require more aim or boss fights being more implemented into the combat itself, or more difficulty in the combat overall, as sword hits don't knock enemies down in one hit like Arkham generally does, and most importantly, the ability to mind control enemies in the middle of combat and have them fight with you in that combat. Now I know I really went ham on gameplay right now, but I really want to emphasize how good the hands behind that Wonder Woman game were, as this topic has been covered by everyone at this point, but these nitty gritty core mechanical details have not been talked about as much as I would like. They could have gave Wonder Woman a decent and unique variation of Game Award winning Arkham combat like Middle-earth had. This company is cooked. Gotham Knights was made at generous best, and as Demigod reported, they apparently were delusional enough to briefly start making a sequel to Gotham Knights before deciding to cancel it. Like, Gotham Knights could have been an easy dub if they just made that a properly written Arkham game with Arkham combat, given that the end of Arkham Knight, someone had a retired Batman, and all they would have needed was innovation of co-op with most of the same Arkham mechanics. I will admit, if you judge Squad as a traversal shooter, then the gameplay wasn't that horrible, as it barely plays any differently from the well-liked Sunset Overdrive, and sure, I hate gear stat number progression too, but guess what game also had that, even though the protagonist went through his past games dressed as revealing as this. Problem with Squad, beyond a buggy launch, was that the story was too horrible to excuse. Although I will say that I don't view Squad as any worse than Insomniac's Spider-Man 2, as enemies crawl the walls while you fight them, unlike Insomniac symbiotes. Batman beat the whole squad the first time around, and Flash ended up having to save the team. Batman only ended up losing to them later when the squad got prep time in a 1v4, which was still pretty bad via the Harley Quinn cutscene of her roasting Batman with info she shouldn't even know before shooting him. But then there's Spider-Man, who would have died in an under a minute 1v1 fight to Kraven and never got a 1v1 win against a main character in the second game, not counting the symbiote. I have two main points here. Marvel wouldn't be better than DC if Spider-Man fans weren't cope as hell to the max with the same squad bullshit that was even worse with Spider-Man. Marvel only wins exclusively due to Marvel Rivals, where Chinese devs lock the fuck in and embarrass these shit show Western devs, and also shut down that live service bad narrative that comes from shitty channels like Yong Yeah that I've dunked on before, as it has some petty minority of these types of bots looking for rigged matchmaking videos or whining about a bunch of shitty Western devs being fired because they couldn't climb to Grandmaster or Celestial, or they have no friends to climb with as their lonely ass bitches. Second point of the tangent is that DC wasn't too bad from a gameplay perspective, regardless of people pressing DC over things that dumb brain-dead Insomniac games did as well. But the one thing that's worse than a mid-game that still isn't as good as an Arkham game is deciding to not release a game at all that had a great dev team behind it, like Middle-earth devs as delved into earlier. Like, what is going on with leadership beyond the games? How do they go with James Gunn's slop over Batman Beyond? Everything James Gunn does makes far less money than anything Snyder or others do. As you can see here, Snyder films are way higher in box office performance, and even Black Adam, which critics really focus on tearing into, did much better than every film directed or overseen by Gunn. Hell, Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey did better than his Squad movie too. And you PDF file Gunn stands can argue with the fucking chart, or cope with streaming numbers on a niche platform like HBO Max that's one of the least selling streaming services, and generally doesn't have a button on the TV remote for a fucking reason.
And speaking of HBO Max, things are not looking too good for old Gunny Boy there. That's because the first installation of his new MCU, what was it, DCU, called Creature Commandos, which didn't even break the viewership numbers of Velma, a literal meme show. Getting back on the topic of games, this is actually not the first time that a studio says, hey, let's make a game based on something that James Gunn did. Look at Guardians of the Galaxy. Those films were pretty good, not to mention the third one, which totally ruined Adam Warlock's character, turning him into a joke, and don't even get me started on how they didn't do the High Evolutionary Justice. But that's besides the point. These films did well, these characters are liked, but the game sold poorly. Why? That's because they're just not that popular of characters on their own. Spider-Man, Insomniac Spider-Man 2, hell, even that did pretty well. That story got almost as much backlash as the Suicide Squad game, but people are going to see Spider-Man and want to play the game. Believe me, even if the Suicide Squad game had an award-winning story, everyone loved it, it still wouldn't do that particularly well. Maybe it would do slightly better. But at the end of the day, a bad Justice League game would have done a lot better than the best Suicide Squad game. But for some reason, Warner Bros. Is adamant on sidelining Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Cyborg, The Flash, so that they can promote the Suicide Squad. And they even went as far as to waste a character slot in the new Mortal Kombat game by making it Peacemaker, who not a single person ever asked for, just so that they can focus on this IP. Who do you think is gonna look at like a casual gamer, right? You're gonna go to GameStop, be like, oh, is that the Suicide Squad? Gee, I really wanna play as Harley Quinn and not play as the Joker. Oh, I'm so excited, the Joker's in it? Wait, he's a twink and he makes Jared Leto's Joker look like fucking The Rock in comparison? Yeah, that's not gonna do well. So what I'm saying is that it was doomed at the start. And getting back to James Gunn, the reason why I opened with him is because the cancellation of the new Wonder Woman game is largely his fault. I'm going to say that. Why? Because recently James Gunn announced that from now on all DC games are gonna tie in one way or another to his new DCU. Obviously, since Wonder Woman was in production before he became head of DC Studios, it's not going to be a part of his universe. It's not going to tie into it. As such, as head of DC, he probably was one of the people responsible for its cancellation, which is going to get overlooked or ignored by most people because James Gunn can do no wrong, even though he's done his ample share of wrong, believe me. Ultimately, the fact that one guy has way too much control on everything DC is what led to this dark side, a James Gunn tyranny taking place over Earth. Well then, that's all I have to say. Take it away, Joker.
But with everything Resican just said, it's beyond me how people and no-integrity YouTubers are so soft on James Gunn for some reason, on top of the evidence pointing towards him being a literal PDF file. How does he have a say in gaming too? When will people realize that the only good DC media we can get is when that sick PDF file, MCU popcorn dick joke slop maker isn't involved? It's why Penguin was good, as that was announced before Gunn somehow failed to the top of DC. Matt Reeves is the only thing left in DC that can make something significant enough, and I never even put his Batman movie on the level of The Dark Knight or BVS. Get the fuck out of here with your CW budget cross-eyed Superman that your Cope fanboys had to edit out for you on their thumbnails, shilling for your dog-ass immature media where Peacemaker jokes about blowing genitals on a beach. Children's movies like Megamind and both Incredibles movies run absolute circles around this insecure ass clown that has to animate himself into movie intros. But yeah, Wonder Woman may very well be another victim of Gunn's PDF file wrath, which is a shame because beyond my main reasons of great God of War Arkham hybrid gameplay potential, they also would have had valid progressive points with the first significant female lead superhero game, as said in an ancient video of mine that's now become outdated sadly. But anyway, thanks for watching me ramble. Join the server as we can really use some true independent thinking DC fans, and consider checking out other DC videos, as I'm honestly tired of garbage Spider-Man media that hasn't been good since Raimi and the Activision games. But anyway, thanks for watching.